Well, hi, it's Tommy Toole, and we are with another lesson of how to get more out of your breakup than just heartache. And this is sort of one that I added at the last minute. I did a survey, and many of you said that you wanted to have, you're having problems with an angry, manipulative ex. So this is the lesson on the manipulative ex, which is a little out of order in the protect, protect, protect module, but I thought it belonged here best. So with that said, here's what we're going to discover. In the big picture, we're going to teach others how to treat us. So that's our best defense against a manipulative ex. And being consistent, that's the number one rule. So how to deal with the manipulative ex is the big picture that I want you to take away from this lesson, and teaching your ex how to treat you. So let's jump in. Teaching your ex how to treat you. All right. So it's hard to treat others with respect when they do disrespectful things to us. Part of teaching others how to treat us is to model that behavior and how we treat them. But let's face it, some exes are just out for blood, and this can be a volatile time. So it isn't always easy or even right to take the high road no matter how hard you try. You can get nowhere fast. And since you're not a human doormat, there comes a point where you just have to draw your line in the sand. I'm preaching to the choir here because nobody knows this better than you. You know what I'm talking about. I know you do. Look, you drew your line with a big tree trunk sized branch, right? That says, I'm getting divorced here. I've drawn my line, and that's why we're here today. Or maybe you're on your way to divorce, maybe you haven't actually done that yet, but you've still drawn your line. You've said enough is enough already. Problem is, now that you've drawn that line, now is not the time to cross it by being wishy-washy. Easier said than done, Tom. I know. Just listen to me. Hear me out. You see, you had boundary problems to begin with in your marriage. Transitioning those boundaries in divorce are going to be 10 times harder. It's possible to do, but this is the heavy lifting part in divorce. We have to exercise and flex those coping muscles and stay strong. So here's how. But before I do tell you that, I want to give you a quick little story. So this is the story about my friend Dan, and I mentioned him earlier a few lessons ago. Dan was a rich guy who married a woman who he turned into a monster. And I say it's his fault because he contributed to her becoming the way she was, because there were no boundaries in the marriage. So he contributed to a certain lifestyle, a lifestyle she embraced and came to expect. So meet Fifi. A lifestyle of extravagance, entitlements, abundance, and luxury. Not only did she expect this lifestyle, later she came to demand it. So, Dan was pretty well off and is still pretty well off. And she just, got used to spending his money. So despite the fact that Dan made plenty of money, he never seemed to have enough of it. His wife, Fifi, was a spender. She was out of touch, really, with money. So out of touch that she spent money that they didn't even have. Willpower was a dirty little word as far as she was concerned. So Dan wasn't without his own faults either. He had a bit of a drinking problem. Instead of dealing with the problems in their marriage, Fifi self-soothed by shopping while Dan drank. If I were doling out grades for Coping Skills 101, both of them would have earned a D-. Fast forward to the year of the divorce, Dan is still drinking and Fifi is still shopping with Dan's money. But when Dan got a DUI, Fifi eventually ran out of money. Go figure. This is where I paused and said something very profound to Dan, like, sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better. Fifi used Dan's DUI as leverage to get what she wanted, which was more money, of course. Shopping was her drug. It didn't stop there, though. She used their two girls as pawns and would let she wouldn't let Dan see them after the DUI. And in truth, Dan was probably more sober after the DUI than he'd ever been in the last 5 to 10 years. So when he couldn't see his girls, he was absolutely devastated. When Fifi made demands for more money, telling him he couldn't see the girls until he gave her some, Dan would give in and give her money out of guilt. Let's see. So I get this visual of a woman in cowboy boots and a fiddle at a hoedown. You know what I'm talking about? Anyone else see the picture I'm talking about with the fiddle? I think she was playing him just like a fiddle. That's the thing. It's easy to see this stuff when it's not your own drama. It's plain to see, though, when it's somebody else's. Dan and Fifi obviously had boundary problems in their marriage, and it just got worse in divorce. That is, of course, until Dan started getting help. He stopped drinking and started getting stronger. He learned a few new coping skills and started setting boundaries with Fifi. But most importantly, he was consistent with his boundaries. Whenever Fifi would ask for more money, Dan would tell her no. He'd stick to his guns and let her know that the girls could come stay with him if she couldn't care for them. There were times when Fifi would be late picking the girls up from having a spa day. Dan would take the girls and leave a note telling her she could come get them later. He'd take the girls and they'd go do something fun instead of waiting around. And initially, Fifi was stunned that Dan was growing a backbone. Do you see what he did here? He didn't call her, and he didn't get into a big diatribe with her. He simply went what I call 1990 and left a note, taped it to the door, and said he'd be back. And then he turned off his cell phone and all communication. So what about 1990, Tommy? Well, in 1990, which is, of course, I'm dating myself, but many of you are probably too young to even remember this. But in 1990, hardly anyone had a cell phone. There was no such thing as text messaging back then. It was impossible to pester someone via text or receive constant calls when you were out of town or on the road. So when you go 1990 on the X, you unplug all communication devices and only check it when you get back. But you see, the beautiful thing about 1990 is there was no guilt in not knowing if you missed a call because or turning off your phone, because there was no such thing. So that's the beauty of 1990. So naturally, she lashed out and wouldn't let Dan see his girls. It tore Dan up, but he stayed the course. Fifi wouldn't talk to Dan or take his calls. She'd limit his communication with the girls by taking their phones. But when the girls acted up, who do you think was the first person she'd call? Yep, you can hear the phone ringing right now. Sound familiar? Most of us know this game or one very similar. I'm telling you, it's the same circus for all of us, just different clowns. So, how do you deal with a manipulative ex, and how do you flex those coping muscles and stay strong? Okay, well, let me give you a couple action items, couple things. When the ex uses your kids as pawns, don't give in. Know that you will see your kids again. Come on, they're your kids. You know them. Snap out of it. Kids are going to fight. And it's just a matter of time before the ex has had it up to here with them, right? And she'll be calling you, or he'll be calling you to come get them. You will be the first person on the ex's list of do disturb call. And, and I guarantee you the problem will be solved. You'll get your kids. So relax and know nature will take its course. In the meantime, use your time alone to recharge your battery. Do something productive and don't let guilt or other self-deprecating emotions eat you up. So, what do you do when the ex finally calls, but it's not your time to have the kids, and you have maybe you have a wild romantic weekend planned for you and the new squeeze, or I don't know, I'm just sort of exaggerating here. Or maybe, your wild time alone is getting your toes painted, or maybe going to the tackle store. I don't know. But you have choices. You can either receive your children or don't. Here is my school of thought on this for what it's worth. You had kids, therefore you are a parent at all times, regardless of the court visitation order. Divorce sucks, and it is really crappy of the ex to behave like this, but that's why you divorce them and their selfish tendencies. So if the ex dumps the kids on you and you didn't factor them into your plans, change your plans. It's not about the ex getting to do what they want to do. It really isn't, even though it feels that way. It's about you getting to spend time with your children. They didn't ask to be put in this position. And look, when they grow up, they will know you were always there for them, that you never turned your back on them, and they were always welcome in your home, and that kind of love and respect for your kids comes back tenfold. Take it from one who is speaking from experience. Plus, if the new squeeze doesn't understand this about you, then that should tell you something about them. Dump them. But Tommy, what if I'm already out of town? Am I supposed to drop everything and turn around and come back home every time this happens? Okay, here is where it gets tricky. If the situation isn't dire with the kids, I would say no. Use your good judgment. If you're already out of town and the ex is demanding you to come get your kids when it isn't your time for them, then you have to set the boundaries and pick your battles. Once you make that decision, don't waver from it. Lay down the law, set your boundary, then reassure them you will check in with them when you return to town. Then go 1990 on the ex. So, action items to help you teach your ex, your manipulative ex, how to treat you. All right, so when it comes to disrespecting your time, disrespecting the drop-off is a big one. Stick to the custody order, court order on the schedule. If the ex drops the kids off on any other time outside of normal visitation, make it clear that you will do this occasionally, and then document it every single time so that when you go back to court, and eventually you will, trust me, you will. I think my ex and I went back like 11 times and we had a pretty simple divorce. So you can up the child support payments with just cause, just by keeping a calendar of all of this stuff. So don't mess around. I recommend this for the first year or year and a half after the separation, because this is the critical time for setting the boundaries and establishing how you expect to be treated. And you need to be reasonable. So I'm just going to add that caveat. Be reasonable. Disrespecting pickup. When the ex holds up your plans and is late for picking up the kids, then leave and go about your plans with the kids, even if it's inconvenient. Then leave a note on your door letting them know they forfeited their visitation. This will send a clear message that you aren't a doormat. So, consistent visitation. Be consistent with your visitation. Be on time to drop off and receive the kids. This may be hard for you if you aren't used to playing by the book. You may even think it's one of those situations where if I scratch his back, he'll scratch mine, or vice versa. Wrong. In divorce, one good deed does not deserve another. I mean, that should be another golden rule I should spell out, but I didn't. At least until the divorce has had years to mature, this golden rule about one good deed deserves another in divorce, it does not apply. All good deeds go unnoticed the second the ex's feathers get rifled over some issue of the day. Remember, you are teaching your ex how to treat you in divorce right now. If you want them to be on time, then you must play by the same set of rules. So, meeting the ex with the kids when you live miles apart. Okay, this is another issue that can come up. I had a bad experience with this, so bad that my ex ended up not speaking to his children for 7 years. And that's a long story. I'm not going to get into it, but I can just tell you this is not ideal. The one who lives out of town from the kids' school is the one who is seen as the outsider. And truthfully, you will become that. Most of the driving will be put on you. And God forbid somebody leave a backpack behind Sunday night. And you have to make that hour drive there and back again. So, my advice to you is try to live in the same town, because what ends up happening is that the one parent who lives in the different town from their schools will miss out eventually. School and school activities are so much a part of children's lives that if you aren't there to be part of it and there for the joy in their day, you're getting gypped. You really will get gypped off. And I know many of you already know that, and that's what you fear. And if you have that situation, I know it's sometimes unavoidable, but there are things you can do to work out the long distance living situations. And I'm not going to get too far into depth with that right now. But my advice to you is, just try to live in the same town if that's at all possible. And finally, document everything. I've said this probably a dozen times, but excuse me, if it seems trivial, I know it seems trivial, but you really should document everything. If the ex isn't going to respect the court orders, then this is your best approach to getting their attention. It really is. You document their actions or inactions and present it to the judge so that when you ask for more child support, the judge will grant it. You will have, as I mentioned, just cause. So from the toolbox, just remember that divorce is like a side effect you never really ever thought about. It's like if you had a steroid injection and the nurse tells you, well, the risk is, slower healing time if you have a surgery in the next short term. Not a big deal if you really have no elective surgery schedule or in the next 30 days after the injection. But no one tells you this could be a big deal if you are supposedly, let's just say you're in a car accident or you suddenly have a medical need for surgery, then, your healing process is going to be slower. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to give you these scenarios like this, the injection thing, or side effects. So you will know what can happen before it happens. So information is powerful. And when you have the leg up on how some of these events may turn, you will be better prepared on how to handle them. That is my hope anyway. So, all right, I hope this helps. Check out From Here Forward next, and I'll see you over there.